Hello, all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with all you beautiful reflections of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we are super happy to have you here, and we just ask that you bring an open mind and heart to your listening experience and to be prepared to explore vantage points that I'm convinced will help shift or solidify your current understanding of the ultimate nature of reality in a way that is extremely empowering. Speaking of exploring powerful perspectives, I'm super excited to announce that on January 5th, I'm going to be freely gifting each of you my very first book, The Golden Key: Modern Alchemy to Unlock Infinite Abundance. In the book, which was initially shown to me in a dream and has been followed by a next level amount of synchronicity, by the way, I share the keys to manifesting abundance that I've personally discovered over 20 plus years of trial, error, and deep exploration of these perspectives, as well as one golden key that ultimately ties them all together. Also, I would like to invite you to participate in a unique abundance manifestation experiment with me and the other readers that is outlined in detail at the end of the book and at the book's website, goldenkey.gift, where readers will also share the inspiring results of their abundance manifestation experiments. So if you're wanting 2021 to be the year that you alchemize the circumstances in your life so that your abundance expands to an entirely new level, head over to goldenkey.gift to sign up to accept my golden gift right when it comes out on January 5th.
All right, all you positive heads, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited about today's episode, and I think partly because it's what I'm super passionate about, and the other part is because I feel like on this energetic high today, which is really nice because earlier this week it hasn't felt like that at all. I don't know about you guys, but this week has been pretty challenging. This eclipse, I normally don't feel such intensity around the eclipse in a challenging way, and this one certainly was for me. I definitely went through a series of emotional releases, which were really, really good. And I'm sure that is contributing to my energetic high today. But I found this week very interesting. There was one day where I just wanted to cry, and another day where I felt just super stressed out and for absolutely no reason. Well, there were maybe a few reasons, but it was just in excess. And I knew a lot of it wasn't mine. And later on that night, before I went to bed, I just had this emotional release of laughter. And for me, that's one of my main emotional releases. And you might think, oh, that's great. But sometimes it's not so great, where it can be really inappropriate. But, I've worked with it over the years. And the other night, it was kind of fun, to where I was just laughing and laughing hysterically and for absolutely no reason. And laughing at myself for laughing in this way. And so that was very fun, and it felt really, really good. And these emotional releases that I'm sure we've all been going through are very beneficial. And it's also what's in the energy of the collective right now. We're really being called to look at our stuff and let it go. We can't bring our baggage with us through this amazing time that we're going through. We're coming up on this conjunction on the solstice this year, which is this beautiful opportunity for us to really go within ourselves, understand ourselves, really connect with our own inner knowing. It's really all about ourselves, and making that choice to take that personal responsibility to work on ourselves and to focus on the love. And we got to clear our baggage in order to do that. It makes it a lot easier. And so today, what I want to talk about is actually a question that I got through Instagram this morning. And I'm really glad that I found it or got it, because a lot of times if I get a message that's like a request, it gets like hidden, and I'm not so social media savvy, and so I don't see it. But today, luckily, I did, and I thought this was a really, really good topic to address. It's related to QHHT, which is quantum healing hypnosis technique, which is the technique that I practice, which is Dolores Cannon's method of hypnosis for healing. And but it doesn't just apply to that. It applies to all of us and how we work with ourselves and our intuition on a daily basis, and how important that is for us in our growth and our soul's evolvement. And so the question is this. Hi, I always hear you talk about QHHT sessions on the podcast. I went for one the other day and it didn't work for me. I couldn't let go of my physical self. Do you have any advice? Yes, I do. And the first thing that I want to say about this is that you are not alone. This is a question that has come up many times. I've seen it either on our Positive Heads Facebook page or another Facebook page, or even from my own clients. And yes, even though I'm now a level 3 practitioner, which is amazing, and I'm very proud of myself to say that. I just got my level 3 certification just a few weeks ago. It just came through, and it took me a couple of years, partly because I had a baby during that process, but it feels really good to finally have achieved this level of certification, because I do believe that the way that this technique is practiced matters. And at the same time, I also believe that it doesn't matter who you go to. And what I mean by that is you are going to go to the person who is perfect for you. And that's just the way it works, because your higher self is going to guide you to that person. And what happens in your session is always what is exactly appropriate for you at that moment. And sometimes the perception is it didn't work because we had a different expectation of what was going to happen. Because what we hear from practitioners, myself included, are all the amazing sessions. We don't hear about the ones where people had difficulty, and how where, maybe it took me a lot longer time to help someone, really get into a deeper state. And maybe they stayed in a lighter state. Regardless of what happens, it's exactly what's supposed to happen, and it always works. So what I mean by it always works is what happens for you is what's supposed to happen for you. Your higher self knows what's necessary and what's appropriate, and they're never going to give you something more than what you can handle. And they're only going to give you what you are able to accept, because anything else would just be a waste of time or would maybe even hinder you. And they know best. They know you. They are you, your higher dimensional aspect of you, and they see all of you in all of your aspects from this bird's eye perspective. So they know exactly how to help you. And your higher self is always working with you and for you. And it really ramps up when you decide to have a session, because they really want us to be able to do this stuff for ourselves. That's a really big deal, that we do it for ourselves, that we are the ones that are making the decision, right? They can't do it for us. That's not helpful. It's only helpful if we get it on our own. And there are many who can help us and guide us towards this understanding that we ultimately come to on our own. But 90% of this is always up to us. Always up to us. We have to decide. We need to do it for ourselves. And so what happens, I think, a lot of times when we're going into a session like this, and we have an expectation of what we feel like it should be, meaning a lot of times people feel like, okay, I'm going to go into a trance state and I'm not really going to be there. I'm not going to be aware of what's going on. And this other energy or entity is going to come through and speak through me. And then I'll get to listen to my tape later and hear everything that was said. But that is not what happens. I'll tell you, that might happen. No, it never happens because it's always you. Okay, so that's my first point. But literally, the feeling of that is maybe 1% to 2% of the time. Maybe. 99% of the time, my clients and most of the other practitioners that I talk to and hear from, most of the time, our clients are very, very much aware of what is going on in the session. It is very, very rare that they're completely out and don't remember a thing. And this is what will trip people up and feel like the session didn't work because they were totally aware. But that's not the case. Our higher self wants us to be aware of the communication that they are having with us. This is the biggest thing. And this is why I love this technique so, so much. And this is why it always, always works too, regardless of what your perception of it is at the time when you just do it, because you'll see as time progresses how much you did actually or do learn from it. It's my favorite tool because what it does is it provides us this deeper connection to the awareness of our own inner knowing, right? This is an inner knowing that is within us at all times. This is not a different entity that comes and takes over you. This is just one half of your brain. We are so used to listening to the one side, that's the conscious side, that's the monkey mind, that's always negating or telling us the negative things. We're not used to listening to that side, that angelic side that is always guiding us and protecting us. And there are many ways that they are trying to help us in our daily life all the time. For example, how many times have you had an intuitive hit? Like, you know you're not supposed to do something, and then you just know it, but you go and you do it anyway because you didn't listen to that knowing that's inside. It's like this very subtle voice. Sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's screaming at you, depending on how grave the situation is, but you hear it. And if you choose to not listen to it, you learn your lesson and you learn that, oh yeah, I really shouldn't have done that thing that I knew I shouldn't have done. And I should have listened to that little voice inside me that told me, yeah, that's not a good idea. And the more we do that, the more we start to understand our own intuition. We understand that this is a voice that is always within us. And this is exactly what happens in a session. This voice that we hear within us in those moments is no different than the voice that we're hearing in our session. Yes, it is you. I had a client one time, I remember she woke up and she felt like it didn't work. And I felt like she had a really wonderful session, but she felt like it didn't work because she remembered all of it and she was very aware the entire time. But she was going through and trusting the first thing that came to her mind. And this is just the stage that she was in her own evolution. Her higher self was working with her to help her understand how to work with them, how to work with her own intuition, how to understand it. And a lot of times, the doubt is how we learn the best. It's how I learn the best. And it takes a little time. And what I'll say for any of you who have had a session, and if you feel like it didn't work, I want you to absolutely go back and listen to it. Listen to it again and again. Maybe, spread the time out if you want, but definitely keep going back and listening to it. And I promise you, there are nuggets in there that you will be surprised to hear. Not that you don't remember them or weren't aware of them when you were in your session, but maybe they have become more significant later in a few months or right when you're listening to it, because your higher self knows. And that's the way it works. And I'll tell you what, Every single time I have had a client that feels like they were super aware or it didn't work, what they also always tell me is the sensation, the energetic sensation that they have in their body, or the feeling of lightness that they have afterwards. These feelings are things that we cannot make up even if we tried. And that all that is evidence that your higher self is working with you in the background, even though you weren't really ready to work with it. It's still working with you. And that is why it always works. You always get an energetic upgrade. That's what that is. That vibration, that lightness. It's an energetic upgrade. And it's helping you to move to your next step in the step that you are ready for. And it's okay. Be completely patient with yourself, compassionate with yourself. It's okay to be exactly where you are. Don't compare yourself to all of the other intuitives or channels or other people's sessions who you've seen. They are on their own path and you are on yours, and it is perfect exactly where it is. And I also want to remind everyone that this kind of work, this work in the spirit realm, in the energetic realm, is very, very subtle. And these subtle changes, while we may not necessarily quite recognize them at first, in the long run, we recognize how monumental they were for us. And the way I like to explain this subtlety of these energetic changes is we exist in space-time. Here on Earth, we move around in space, but we're stuck in time. And in the spirit world, we can move around in time, but we're stuck in space. And so any movement in that space is huge. If you can only imagine, when the space is immovable, no movement, the slightest bit of movement is humongous. And so this is how I want people to look at work in spirit, that everything you do is very, very subtle, and it is making a very huge energetic change that you will see, I promise you, in time. It always takes a little bit of time. We have to be really, really patient with ourselves and our journey. And it always, always becomes clear. And this is something that's interesting about a session. So many times, and this is what will hold people back from going deeper when they're in their session, is very often when people start out to first visualize or sense or feel or hear whatever it is that they're being shown, very often it's cloudy or, not clear. And it takes a while to get into that. And even then, a lot of people feel like, I saw this in a book, I read it in a movie, I'm making this up. And that's never the case. And I'll tell you why. It feels like that because that is your conscious mind coming in and trying to mess with your process. What it is your higher self has been working with you your entire life to show you these certain lessons, to help you understand these certain things. And so they have helped you gravitate towards certain movies, certain books, certain people, and certain conversations that help you to understand these things. And so a lot of times we'll go into a session and they'll show us these things again, thinking, I'm showing you again. I'm trying to show you the same thing I've been showing you to help you understand. And consciously, as humans, we think, now I'm making it up. So a big part of this is just letting all of that, I'm making this up, and analyzing it go. Because I promise everyone who ever does a session or is working with their own intuition, you will figure it out. It will all become clear. It's kind of like watching a movie that doesn't make sense. like a Quentin Tarantino movie, or I like to think of like the movie The Usual Suspects. Very confusing movies to watch, and you don't understand necessarily what's really going on at the beginning. And if you were that person who's sitting there with other people in the room watching the movie, and you're sitting there saying, "What's going on? I don't get it. Somebody explain this to me." Not only are you being super annoying to everybody else in the room, but you're interrupting everybody else, and you're not paying attention to what's going on. And so this is kind of what we do to ourselves when spirit is talking to us. We're like, "Hey, I don't get it. What's going on? What are you trying to say?" Just be quiet. Just be quiet and watch and listen. It will all become clear. And that is my biggest advice for going into a QHHT session, going into meditation to get answers. Anytime that you're going in, just be quiet and listen. Just be quiet and listen and trust. Trust the very first thing that comes. And let it be weird. Let it not make sense. That's totally okay. How many times in your life are things weird or they don't make sense and it all gets figured out later? Let it go. You don't need to figure it all out right now. It will be figured out, but you're not going to figure it out if you keep interrupting it. So remember that. It's really about getting out of our own way and just being quiet. I'm making it sound very simple because it is. We make it complicated on ourselves by negating it, by thinking that we're making it up, that it doesn't make sense. But it does if you just be patient. I promise. I think I want to tell you guys a little story about things not quite making sense and how our higher self really is working with us to help us understand all of these things on our own. Because, like I said before, that is really the ultimate goal, to help us learn how to listen and how to trust our own intuition, because this is our greatest tool in this existence that we have, is our intuition. All of the answers are within us, and we can get them if we're just able to listen to that side, right? So one of my past lives that I have had, and actually, before I get into this story, I just want to say really quick, what's interesting about a lot of my QHHT sessions as of late is we know this as a past life regression technique. And oftentimes, my clients are not going into a past life. They're going into this current life, because it's this current life that is something that happened in this life that is affecting them the most from moving forward. It's not something in the past that's carried through. While that can happen and does, I'm seeing more and more and more that it is this current life that we're holding on to the baggage. And I think that's a really good point to bring up, that we expect, it's another one of our expectations. We expect to go into a past life. We can't expect to go into anything but a different experience, another experience where our higher self is going to show us something so we can understand, so we can get it within our own selves, so we can evolve. And so here's one of the ways that my higher self was working with me throughout my life. So there was this movie that I saw years and years ago. It was a horrific movie about a terrible time in history. And there have been many movies on horrific times in history. And I've seen a lot of those movies. This one in particular was extremely difficult for me to watch. It was as if I was experiencing it as I was watching it. I couldn't handle it. I was so emotional as I was watching it. I was crying so hard I couldn't breathe. It hurt to watch this movie. And it stuck with me. It stuck with me for years. This memory, this feeling of what I experienced watching that movie. And like I said, there's other movies about these times. And while they were awful and I also cried through those, I didn't feel it like it was my own experience. And that never made sense to me. It didn't make sense for the longest time. I couldn't understand why. And then I got into doing past life work. And one of my very, very first clients at the beginning of this, when I first started, she went into a past life where it was very similar to the movie that I was watching. And as she was going through her session, I was literally in it with her. And it's normal for me because I'm a seer. I can see a lot of times what my client is seeing, and not as clearly, but there's like a vague picture in my mind. But with this client, it was like I was in it and I was seeing exactly what she was seeing. And I was feeling it too. And when she woke up from that trance state, she looked at me very wide-eyed and she said, "That was you." And I just shook my head. I knew it was me. Of course it was. And after that, it all made sense. This is how our higher self works with us. These little clues they give us throughout our life saying, hey, listen to this feeling, listen to this intuition, listen to this knowing that you have. Feel how strong that is within you. It means something. And they teach us little by little by little. And throughout the years, it all becomes clear. This is what you were trying to tell me. And this is all the ways that you were trying to tell me. All the little ways that you were working with me until I decided to really pay attention and figure it out. And then I got it. And wow, this is what they want us to do. They want us to figure it out for ourselves. They want us to learn how to work with them, with our own higher selves, right? On our own. And while it's beautiful to have an amazing helper and a guide to help us through that, we can also do this for ourselves every day in meditation. And I promise you, if you do this every single day and you practice getting into that quiet space in your mind where you're just trusting and letting the flow be whatever it's going to be, and letting whatever weird thoughts or images come into your brain, just let it. No matter how weird and crazy it may be, practice just letting it. Just let it. Who cares what it means? It's not for the examination at this point. Just let it come. I promise you'll figure it out later. You just got to take the time to practice and to pay attention. And you will see that your practice will pay off. And you will have a very clear understanding of your intuition and how to listen to it. So I hope this episode helps any of you who have had a session that wanted to understand it a little bit more, and any of you who also wanted to learn how to work with your intuition a little bit more, and also understand your higher self and how it works with you. Yes, it seems very confusing and it's all confabulated, but in the end, it really is all just very simple. We're just making it hard on ourselves. We got to get out of our own way and let it flow. Releasing all those expectations of what we think it should be, what it should look like, what it should feel like. It's going to come how it comes. Just accept it how it is. I love you all. That's it for me today. I'm going to leave you with the song. This is Trevor Hall, Without Expectation. Until next time, love you all.
Also, before we cue up today's song, I wanted to remind you about the game with the universe on our website, where you can choose the first number that comes to your mind and it'll pull up that episode number of the podcast. I've been saying this is a great way to co-create synchronicity and magic with your higher self for quite some time. And if you go to positivehead.com/universe, there is a super fun and simple interface to play this game with your higher self. I firmly believe just by setting the intention to play in this way, it opens up the door for magic, and it's a synchronistic way to hone in on nuggets of wisdom out of the huge catalog of episodes that are specifically appropriate for you at this time in your journey to becoming the next greatest and greatest version of yourself. And it also makes for a super fun way to spark the curiosity of friends and family by having them choose a number, so they'll hopefully go and check out their number as well, which I greatly appreciate because it helps us to spread the word about the podcast. Once again, the address is positivehead.com/universe. And as a quick reminder, if you're curious to learn more about Purium superfoods and why I take them almost every day, be sure to also check out positivehead.com/transformation. On this journey of becoming the next greatest and grandest version of ourselves that we have all embarked upon, I cannot stress the importance of managing your physical vibration enough. And quite honestly, Purium has put together the simplest plan I've found to do so. I have my favorite, the appleberry shake, at least 5 times a week. Once again, to learn more about the Purium transformation, go to positivehead.com/transformation. Or if you want to keep it simple and just try out my favorite, the appleberry shake, you can go straight over to ishoppurium.com and be sure to use code positivehead for 25% off. I'll spell that for you. It's ishoppurium.com, and be sure to use your positivehead 25% coupon code.
No more secrets. Come as you are. All of it fits just right. Heart to heart. There's no tradition. Nothing by the book. All you need is courage. Have the strength to look. There's no more pretending. You can't measure in this room. Just walk through the doorway. Just follow the tune. I see a robe of patches. It is perfectly arranged. Here, there is no worry. Letting go of shame. We sit in pure absence, without expectation. Pure absence, without expectation. Let us share, don't be scared. Come on in, everything will be alright. Coming true for something new. Hey, what's to lose? All we gotta do is try. Let us share, don't be scared. Come on in, everything will be alright. Coming true for something new. Hey, what's to lose? All we gotta do is try. Let us share, don't be scared. Come on in, everything will be alright. Coming true for something new. Hey, what's to lose? All we gotta do is try. Let us share, don't be scared. Come on in, everything will be alright. Coming true for something new. Hey, what's to lose? All we gotta do is try. Everything will be alright.